Welcome to the Actually You Can podcast. I'm Miff Galloway, a performance coach passionate about supporting ambitious and high-performing women just like you who know they have untapped potential just waiting to be unleashed. If you're looking to massively up-level your performance in all areas of life, you've come to the right place. My goal on this podcast is to take you beneath the surface so you can connect with yourself on a deeper level while providing you with valuable insights and the tools necessary to navigate life's challenges and go after your goals with strength, clarity, and wisdom. If you're ready to uncover the truth which lies underneath so you can recognize your powerful feminine leadership style, pursue your goals unapologetically, and thrive in every aspect of your life, hit the follow button and get ready to explore the incredible possibilities that lie within you. Together, we'll uncover your next steps in achieving peak performance, because actually, you can. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Actually You Can. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of speaking with Pamela Wagner, who is an accomplished and award-winning entrepreneur. But that's not all. There's little that Pamela hasn't done yet at the age of 31. Just to mention some of her accomplishments, she's been to 100 countries, bootstrapped and built a 6-figure agency with no entrepreneurial background, worked at Google, featured multiple times in Forbes, got a master's degree of Harvard Extension School, and climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. I'm so looking forward to diving into these incredible achievements in more detail and hear how you've managed to build such an incredible life on your own terms. So, Pamela, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Miff. Thank you.
So, when I hear about all of your achievements, I think you must be working like 80 plus hours a week and you must be always on the go. But from what I understand with how you approach your life, you're not about the hustle culture. So, on that note, what's important to you about how you approach your life?
So I've seen a lot of times where people succumb to the hustle hearts culture, especially, when they are seen as very successful in the public eye. And in almost all the cases where I've met these people and have interactions with them, I've noticed there's this beautiful image that's being painted of them. But deep inside, they're unhappy, they're unhealthy, they can't keep up a relationship, they always have issues with like their kids or don't even see them. So I started to ask myself early, like kind of like what's all this for, if we don't enjoy what we have in the moment. And also one of the main regrets of people that are dying, I mean, there's been several experiments and studies around that, is, like nobody says I wish I worked more, right? Everybody is more like, hey, I wish I worked less, enjoyed a bit more of my life. And so kind of like right from the beginning of starting my company more than, well, almost 9 years ago now, I decided I wanted to do it a different way. And stubborn as I am, I was convinced that there is a different way to do it. And I'm a person who just, who needs her sleep. I need 8, 9 hours of sleep a night. I get grumpy if I don't have that. I see the impact of my health on my work performance and everything. So like I want to be healthy. And I think when we have these factors in line, like health, happiness, our own satisfaction, all that, then we can provide happiness for anybody that we work for or work with. So the premise is you got to be happy yourself first, and only then you can provide value in the world.
I love that so much. And was this something that you just decided one day, or did you have your own personal experience with feeling unfulfilled or asking yourself, what is this all for? How did you come to, I guess, have this philosophy and approach to life?
So I noticed with quite a few of the accomplishments, like when I got into Google, like when I climbed Kilimanjaro and so on, that what was interesting is every time I got there or I got into a university and so on, yes, I was happy, but it didn't last long. So I noticed quickly that what you gotta enjoy is the way there. If you don't enjoy to the way to the goal, then the happiness at the end is really, really short lived, or satisfaction or content and so on. So I was like, well, how do I make that road to whatever goal I have more enjoyable? And if this is from what I always say, I know the only life I have so far, then let me better enjoy every day. And I think also as you get like old, and this sounds really weird coming from me right now because I still consider myself fairly young, but life passes by quicker as you get old, and there's a science that confirms why we have that perception. And pretty much it's saying, because more years have passed, the more memories we have to deal with. So I really want to make sure that when I look back at those years, that I'm like, you know what? I don't regret anything. I did everything I wanted. And I'm happy the way I did it. I didn't let any relationship suffer. My health is great. And I feel good about myself with every year that passes.
It's incredible. I can definitely appreciate and resonate with the feeling that life passes you by. I remember distinctively when I was younger, just wishing I was, 16 so I could learn to drive, then wishing I was 18 so I could go out with my friends. And now I'm like, whoa, 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 time is going past way too quickly for my liking at the moment. And so I'm interested to hear from you when you're setting goals and with your particular approach to life, how do you choose which goals to set for yourself?
The goals that feel good to me.
Mm.
So I have to first and foremost say, you know what, when I achieve that, how am I going to feel about that? How is that helping me in whatever we'd call like the next level in life? And typically there's a real purpose behind that. Like, for example, I want to create a certain financial abundance level. I want to maybe gift some family members certain holidays. Maybe I want to my employees to enjoy certain benefits. Um Maybe there's something that I want to be able to afford. Like, for me, being rich, like I've always said to people, is that I can buy whatever I want and need without having to look at the price tag and feel good about it. I'm not yet there, but I think having financial worry is the worst worry that anybody can have. It keeps you from doing anything else. And so once you solve that financial aspect and you feel good about spending money, and you feel good about spending that on yourself as well. Like, there's a lot of rich people that I know that would spend tons of money on other people, but never on themselves, because that's
Mm.
just the way they grew up. But I just want to feel better when I travel. Yes, of course, flying business class is much more comfortable in economy, and going for a massage is better than not going for one, and so on.
Yeah, and you mentioned something really key. You set goals based on what feels good for you. And I see a lot of clients who come to me because they've lost connection with what actually they enjoy, what actually is important to them and makes them feel good. Have you ever felt in a similar way, or have you always been connected to what is important to you and what really makes you feel good?
I think I've just observed it so much from other people where I've seen that they set goals that weren't actually theirs. Those were goals
Mm.
that they had because of some expectations of their family, because of them trying to fit into a certain image, them to try to fulfill certain requirements, or because somebody thought that they should be in a certain way. And I've just always seen people are not happy. They were not happy. And so why would I waste my life pretty much going for something that is not mine, that does not feel mine, that is not really good for me in the end? And that takes a lot of like self-awareness and self-reflection that I don't think many people are willing to spend these days.
I would 100% agree. That's a lot of the time when I work with clients, we spend a lot of time developing that self awareness and even just people's unwillingness to take that moment to deeply reflect. A lot of people think they need to do more to be able to get the different results when actually they need to stop doing and, and start developing that self awareness. What would you say to that?
Yeah, start being more.
100. And so when you set goals based on what feels good for you. How do you then, it seems like you've achieved so much in a relatively short period of time. How do you then go about doing all the things while still enjoying the journey and the process?
So I know that I do my best work when I'm in a good state of being. And then that could sometimes be good stress, right? So there's bad stress, distress, and eustress, good stress. And I just make sure that when I feel stressed, it is good stress. And if I don't feel good, then I try to do something that makes me feel better. And I'll give you an example, like just this morning, had a great morning, and then things just didn't go the way that I wanted them to. And I started noticing that certain things annoyed me, certain triggers and judgments that we have towards other people. And you can literally notice how then one thing by another starts going down. Like I missed a bus, and then the bus was late, and then a meeting was canceled. Blah, blah, blah. And then at one point, I was like, no, 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 hold on, stop, stop, stop. I need to like change this right now because I can't even get work done that way. Like it's really distracting for me. And if I did, I would just like drag the work. And so, you know what? I had ice cream for lunch and it was great and it did the job. I don't do that every day, obviously, right? But I think sometimes we're too hard on ourselves and just say, you know what? It's okay. And if that's ice cream right now, as long as it's not every day, but if it's right now, what makes me feel better, then gosh, go have that, right? And then I started focusing on other things and then things started to go upwards again. So, but it's understanding that you can't do your best work if you're in a state of negative stress and feeling unwell. Like that's not of any use to you nor your clients or colleagues. Like let's say I have to write a blog article. If I don't feel like doing it, it's probably going to take me 4 or 5 hours. I'm going to drag myself, I'm going to procrastinate it and so on. If I'm in a right state of being and feel motivated, 30 minutes and I'm done with that stuff. Right? So if we know these aspects, we just become much more productive and efficient. And I think that's one thing that I figured out over the years. I've just become extremely efficient because I don't just manage time, I manage my energy.
I love that you've touched on energy management, and I'd love to dig into that in a bit more detail. What I was hearing though before we do that is you mentioned you can't do your best work if you're in a negative headspace or you're not feeling good. And I think that's something that you can tell a lot of people and just be like, hey, you need to fill your own cup up before you can support others. And I feel like with a lot of ambitious women who are the majority listen of this podcast, they hear this and they're like, yeah, cool. I still need to show up because I am responsible for caring for my family. I've got this job that I really want to be successful in. And so I think there's a difference between understanding that in theory and the practical application. What would you say to someone who is in that boat, who logically understands, yes, they need to look after themselves to improve performance, but there is a disconnect between the logical side and what the reality looks like?
So I always tell people to start with their own home, right?
Mhm.
And one of the things that is extremely important for me is cleanliness. I love a tidy, clean home. What I don't love is the process of cleaning up. Um, so I get a cleaner.
Yep.
And people can tell me, like, honestly, a lot of people tell me, oh, but I can't afford it. You can afford Amazon Prime, you can afford Netflix, and all these subscriptions, you can afford a cleaner.
Mhm.
So just shift your priorities. And I'm pretty strict with that topic. But a clean home is super, super important. Get a cleaner. Trust me, the time that that frees up to spend on your own, with your partner, with your kids is incredible. And it makes you feel better because things are in order. And I mean, I know people are like, you know what? I hate folding clothes. So I get a person who comes in once a week and folds my clothes. It
Yep.
doesn't matter what it is or what makes you feel good. Get somebody else to do it for you. Like, that's the beauty of the time we're living in. You can literally make money with almost anything. And there's almost always somebody who's willing to provide a service for that, right? Then the second thing I tell people to look at is their health and their nutrition. Fix your nutrition, like seriously. And if you there's a way for everything. If you don't like to cook, well, guess what? There's healthy meal prep that adjusts it to whatever you'd want it to, right? Obviously reduce sugar, all those aspects. So, but like fix your nutrition. That's extremely important, and it makes a major, major difference. And then the other aspect is put in time for yourself.
Mm.
And this is something that I also see with my clients where they do not prioritize themselves. They
Mm.
prioritize their kids' soccer, they prioritize their husband's XYZ, cooking, whatever. You are not able to be there fully as like a wife or as a partner or as a mom if you don't take care of yourself first. Like your kids and everybody else, like if we're talking at this from a female perspective now, are going to
Mm.
benefit so much if you take care of yourself first, right? And nobody's going to suffer in that time. Don't worry about them missing you. You're going to come back, and trust me, it's going to be so much of a better energy because you yourself will be glowing, right?
Mm.
And if you feel like you're like one of my clients, she was always finding an excuse to not do these things. And so I was just like, just put it in your calendar, right? So you have a meeting with yourself. Like trick your brain. If you feel like your doesn't want to do it, find a way to trick your brain to make you do it, right? So start with your home, start with your health, and put yourself first, and you'll see that once you'll take care of these three things, a lot of other aspects are going to fall into place.
I love what you've mentioned with the house and the meal prep. It sounds like what you're sharing is like everything in life that's taking away from your fulfillment bank account. Let's say that, for example, you don't like cleaning or you don't like cooking. It's taking away from that level of fulfillment and you're really thriving. But things just need to get done. So it's going, okay, well, what price am I willing to pay? Is it I'm willing to give up my time to do this, or do I see the value in exchanging money to free up that time to be spent on something else? So it's not saying that you have to outsource everything, understanding that could be a bit expensive for some people, but it's also knowing that if you are willing to invest the money to give you back some time, that is also valuable as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it doesn't always even have to be about money. I mean, I have some family members who work more in exchanging services,
Yeah.
right? So, hey, you
Yeah.
know what? I'm a massage therapist. I'll give you a massage, and in return, you're gonna do my pedicure because you know how to do pedicure or something like that, right?
Love
So,
it.
there's always ways. Like, people just got to open up their minds to something being possible. And uh, there's a person that I very much respect. He's called Greg Braden with two G's, and he oftentimes starts his talk saying, you know what, just imagine there's a folder in your brain that's called possibilities,
Mm.
and imagine that and put that idea in there. So yeah.
That's incredible. Even just hearing you say the word possibilities is if anyone listening to the show, and I'm doing the same, just going, cool, what if something was possible? If I'm looking at my current situations or how I'm going about life, even taking the moment to go, hey, what if something else was possible? I can see how expansive that would be. And I'm interested from your point of view, it sounds, what role does the word possibilities play in your achievements, because you've achieved so much and in a diverse range of areas as well. What role does possibilities play in your life and thinking about possibilities? Are you always thinking about what's possible?
To some extent, I guess, yes. It's just that I tend to ask myself, kind of like, okay, so I want XYZ. How would it look like if XYZ was 10 times better, if it was 5 times better, if it went 5 times faster, if I did it with 5 times less effort, right? So, because what you're doing when you say that to yourself is you're starting to open up neural pathways to connect in your brain. And it takes about 72 hours for new neurons to connect, to form these connections. So it's literally like you can spend like 3 minutes a day or enough if you want to take it up a notch, do it like morning, lunch, and evening. But 3 minutes a day spent thinking about whatever new possibility that you'd want, right? So
Wow.
let's say you just want to free up time and have somebody come clean your house, but you feel like it's too expensive. So I would sit down and be like, okay, how would it feel like if somebody came to my house and cleaned it? And be like, okay, that would feel, I would feel at ease, I would feel happy, I would be delighted. And, I would say, well, how long would that person spend in my house? Well, maybe 3 or 4 hours. And maybe I could already see them, walking around cleaning, asking myself where the cleaning supplies are and all of that. And I just sit with that. And typically what happens these days, like when I'm in the right state of being and in a good state of being, which is by now the majority of time, stuff happens almost instantaneously. Like in this, eh, I would just get a call from someone who's like, "Hey, by the way, I have someone who's looking for a job as a cleaner," or I would open up Facebook and I would see somebody who is talking about how awesome their cleaner is, because our mind then pretty much tunes into that field where something becomes possible. And all we're doing is pretty much fixing our antennas to point the right direction. We're just so fixated on us always knowing everything, where we've forgotten that a lot of things we cannot solve on a knowing level. We
Yes.
have to tune more into like the heart space, into the feeling space. And that's where a lot of things become possible that we didn't even know existed.
I love that you talk about intentional focus on the possibilities, because I you have a lot of friends in, uh, for lack of a better term, we'll call it the spiritual community, and it sounds like what you're talking about is also closely linked to the concept of manifestation. So thinking about something, being really intentional about it, and then being a energetic match for what it is that you're looking to attract. It's the combination of, first of all, you need to have awareness of something for it to be possible and to be able to bring it into your life. You need to, it's like if you decide you want to buy a red car and all of a sudden you're seeing red cars all over the place, that classic example. But I feel like there's really the opportunity in what you've shared to have that focus time of thinking about possibilities. I don't think we potentially do that enough. And that's where we can be getting out of our own ways to create those possibilities and more efficiencies in our life. I mean, you've mentioned as little as 3 minutes per day. Holy cow. If we all spent 3 minutes per day thinking about what was possible for ourselves and then being an energetic match and looking to attract that, holy hell, I'm sure that would change lives.
Yeah, and if you try to like, you'll see how hard it is actually these days to just focus for 3 minutes on one thing. And just feeling that, like, you'll see that other thoughts come into your mind, and your mind is going to start saying, oh, you need to check your mail, or you need to get up, or da 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 dum. So it's actually like the challenge is really being able to say, you know what? No, I'm going to stick with this for these 3 minutes.
Yeah, I can definitely resonate with that. With, I'll set a timer or something, then I'll get an email notification or my phone message will flash, and I'll be like, I've concentrated for like 30 seconds or a minute. This is terrible.
Yeah.
Like, our attention is such a precious resource at the moment. Yeah, the 3 minutes I think will be a challenge for a lot of people. I know in some situations, myself included. You mentioned as well earlier energy management, and I'm really keen to delve into that a little bit more deeper with you. Like, I believe that we can't always control what happens to us, and we're not deserving of all the horrible things that happen to us, but I do think we can control how we respond in any situation. And I feel like that comes down to energy management as well. And you mentioned that if you're not feeling motivated to complete a task, it will probably take you 4 or 5 times longer. How do you work with your energy and your response to whether it's different situations or different feelings that you're feeling? What are some tools that you leverage to be able to manage your energy effectively?
So if I might take a step back, the way I actually started paying more attention to that is because I noticed how stress affects the body. Thousands, tens of thousands of years ago, negative stress was important to us because it warned us, because there was so many dangers for us, and it helped us live longer. But these days, most of stress doesn't help us live longer. It has the opposite effect. It shortens our life. And that's the easiest way to understand this is when we are stressed, our blood flows into our arms and our legs, away from our major organs, because it wants us to fight or flee. So the fight or flight mode, right? So, and if you're then consistently stressed, what happens is your blood is consistently not in the places where it should be. Your body lacks that flow. And of course, any kind of like bacteria, virus, and so on gets stuck much more easily. And that's exactly how we get sick because our body is typically healthy. Our body's main aim is to be healthy. It's an incredible machine. So anything bad that typically comes into our body, if we're healthy, it can deal with it, right? Now, if we're stressed, it cannot. And so, if I'm stressed and my energy is on a lower level on a continuous basis, it has a serious effect on my health. And then, obviously, if I get sick, then I can't do work and so on, right? So, there's consequences to that. So, if I am healthy and if I want to be healthy, what I do is I think the way I manage it is, let me see how I can explain this best. I think it's understanding myself, first of all, when I do my best work, which is typically around the morning hours or early afternoon. I tend to only schedule 2 days a week with meetings, and then the other 3 days are free, ideally. I do not do typically any meetings on Fridays. And I think most people do meetings on Fridays, but nobody likes meetings on Fridays.
No.
So I'm like, that's the first thing you all should get rid of. And then I'm just really non-negotiable with my time and doing things in my time. And what I mean by that is, and people ask me this a lot because I tend to travel all around the globe, and people are like, how do you deal with time zones and meetings and wherever your clients are? I'm like, I've never had a single issue of having meetings at a decent time during the day where it's my day, whether I'm in the US, in Vietnam, Europe, and so on. Like, there's always times that you find that work for both parties involved. And nobody ever complained. Like, it's always been fairly easy. And I just couldn't do a meeting in the night. I just couldn't do a meeting on the weekend. Like, if I had meetings on the weekend, like, I just forget about it because my brain is so trained to like not think about it. So just really understanding what do you like and what do you not like, and then starting to slowly implement that. And if you currently have like meetings on all days and you want to go, for only 2 days a week of meetings, then it's impossible to do it from one week to another. But maybe you could start off with freeing up one afternoon that you block off with your
Mhm.
time, right? So I'm a big advocate for making small changes that you then do consistently, because that leads to much more sustainable change.
Even hearing you talk about finding times that work for both parties, I feel like a lot of the time there's some really high achieving people who feel like they need to self sacrifice to be able to please another person, when in reality, you could find a win win for the other person as well by just being able to ask the question and letting them know, going, hey, for example, this meeting is 4 a.m. my time. Can we shift it a couple of hours so it's a bit more reasonable for me? It might be 1 hour after your work time, but we can both compromise and we can both win in this situation, as opposed to one person always self-sacrificing.
Absolutely. And I think that's also like one of the easiest ways to recognize if you can actually work with someone. Because if you have someone who doesn't understand it and expects you to move it, but they won't, then I think that's pretty unfair. And I see that happening with a lot of like companies that work across continents, and hire labor, cheaper labor from somewhere else, and then expect them to work night shifts. And I do not think that that is fair.
Yes.
It's a little bit exploitative because oftentimes they know that they won't say no. So yeah.
100%. And what I'm hearing in just how you're approaching your life is you really value your own time and how you invest your own time. And I think that's a huge lesson that anyone on this show can take away, obviously, amongst everything else that you've shared as well. But just in everything that you've shared, it sounds like you're really conscious about how you invest the time that you have in this world. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I even sometimes have to practice not feeling bad when I watch a series and not to be too hard on myself. Um I, I do, like, there was recently a new series I discovered and I started binge watching it, and I was like, okay, I'll limit this to a few hours at one time. But I was like, you know what? How often do I do this? Like, I don't do it often. So I'm like, it's okay. So yeah, I'm very conscious, but also have to weigh, not being too strict about it.
Yeah, 100%. And so, with that in mind, you've achieved some incredible things so far in your life. What are some other big goals that you've set for yourself?
I think the main goal right now is the road towards like financial independence and freedom, whereas I'm not necessarily on a strict timeline about that. And I more want to achieve that without, having all the stress. So I really want to make money. I think making money is good because it means that I've helped more people. The more money I make, the more people I've hopefully helped and provided value with. So once I can expand that impact, then I think I've really gotten to the next stage of my own personal growth. Because I think that I've held back a little bit so far with that. And there's a lot more I could do.
Amazing. And I look forward to following your journey and seeing exactly how you go about achieving that, because, yes, you've achieved some incredible things to date. And no doubt it's not a case of if you'll achieve this goal, it's when and how you'll achieve it. I really love that. And so, for those listening to the show, what is a really actionable step that someone can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to step away from the hustle culture and start to place more value on how they're investing their time day to day? What's something really actionable that someone can do?
So, one thing, if somebody is really caught up in that I would recommend is take a pen and paper. Don't do this on your laptop or phone. Take a pen and paper, leave your phone at home, go into your favorite coffee shop, and ask yourself, why am I really working so hard?
Mm.
And then write down what comes to your mind without any judgment. Just write it down. And that in itself will already provide you huge insights. And every single time you start, you feel like your mind is coming back and saying, "Oh, but that's not true. Oh, you shouldn't write that." Da, da, da. Get back to yourself and say, "You know what? There's no judgment." One of my coaches tends to say, "No shame, blame, guilt, or judgment," and I think that's a pretty good phrase to remind ourselves of when we do these exercises. And then you'll understand a lot more about what drives you, why you're really in this place. And it can be a hard realization.
Yeah.
It might also be that you'd have to do this like a couple of times to get to the real reason, right? Almost like asking a couple of times why. So, but by asking yourself these questions and then genuinely looking for an answer, pen on paper, you're going to get quite some insights.
That is such a great exercise. Self-awareness, we've already spoken about that, the importance of, and that is such a great question to be able to ask yourself to start that journey of self-awareness. And to your point, you might have to ask yourself it a couple of times, but most importantly, not to shame, blame, guilt, or judge. I love that as well, because a lot of the time things will come up and we're like, oh, but that sounds really egotistical or that's bad. And it's like, no, it is what it is. We're associating meaning to it if we want. You need to be brutally honest with yourself about what your current situation is if you wish to change and evolve it. I love that so much. So thank you, Pamela, for sharing all the tools and the insights that you have on today's show. If someone's keen to learn more about the work that you do and to follow your journey, where can they find you?
So people could go to hustlelesslivemore.com. So literally instead of hustle hard, hustle less, live more.com. And we tend to continuously publish blog posts, articles, freebies, trainings where you can engage and learn more about the subject and just get some food for that fold of possibilities in your mind.
Amazing. I'll put a link to that resource in the show notes below. Thank you so much, Pamela, for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you too.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I hope this was helpful. If you thought of someone while listening to this podcast, I would be so grateful if you could share this episode with them. While you're doing that, please also take a moment to leave a review on the podcast if you haven't yet already. It takes less than a minute and it means so much to me and helps this podcast to reach more people just like you. Thank you so much for that, and I'll see you in the next episode. In the meantime, go out and achieve every dream you have, because actually, you can.